Welcome to With Love, the Chambers.
Where life, laughter, and lasting lessons meet.
We're the Chambers, a husband and wife navigating faith, family, and everything in between.
Here we share real stories, heartfelt conversations, and a whole lot of love. Because life isn't perfect, but God's grace sure is.
So pull up a seat, grab a cup of coffee, or go ahead and sip that tea, and join us for honest talks, laughs, and the wisdom we're learning along the way. This is With Love, the Chambers.
Welcome back for another episode of With Love, the Chambers. My name is Rufus, and this is my lovely wife, Jamila, and we would like to welcome you back to another very, very special broadcast. Thank you, first of all, for tuning in to today's episode, and as usual, we are excited because we've cooked up a real fun and engaging conversation for you. But before we get into that, I just want to greet my lovely wife. Did you want to say hello to the people?
Oh, hello, people. So good to see everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for the likes, the shares, the follows, for binge listening, for all of the support along the way, for submitting your questions. We appreciate you taking this With Love journey with us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And today, I'll set the context for the conversation.
Yes.
I do just want to dive right in and get out of some of the preliminaries because I feel like we're going to help somebody today.
Yes.
And Jamila, as you know, we are in the midst of paying for some college education.
Yes.
For a young lady who will remain nameless for the sake of this broadcast. We want to protect her identity, but please know.
We've already spoiled her identity.
That we do have a person that we are responsible for that is in college.
Yes.
And, you know, Jamila, we've engaged obviously with her. We've engaged with some of her friends. And, you know, these kids are bright. They are intelligent. They're confident. They have a lot of opportunities to get into the marketplace. Did I say that they are confident, right?
Very confident.
Very
Extremely confident.
But, you know, sometimes engaging with them and they are getting a phenomenal education. And, you know, college is so expensive now. You know, if we had time, we could do a whole episode on college education affordability.
Oh my.
And we acknowledge that college is not a viable option for every young person, but there are a lot of options out there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Jamila, when you think about all that our kids and their friends are receiving through their college education, we always talk about what are they not being taught, mm-hmm. you know, and we've even playfully and seriously considered creating some training and some life coaching modules that could supplement, you know, some of the education modules that they're getting in college. But regardless of that, I want us to dive into a conversation about how they should be posturing themselves to enter the marketplace or enter the workforce post-graduation. And Jamila, I know that this is your subject matter expertise on a number of fronts. You know, being, you know, in your vocation as higher education executive director of a career center at a very upper crust college, but also being a certified dream releaser life coach, right? When you think about our oldest daughter, you think about her clique of friends, what I affectionately call Junior Insecure. Issa Rae and them. But Junior, what are some immediate things that come to mind that they should be thinking about or they should be considering as they prepare and are entering the workforce now?
Yeah, and this conversation really came about because our daughter is just a year away from entering the workforce for the first time. And you and I have had so many landmines and things that we had to navigate really from a relational standpoint in our places of business.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, each one of these young people, no matter what their vocation is, will be able to have the capacity to learn. They are highly effective at utilizing resources to obtain information and
Absolutely.
develop their
Yeah.
skill set.
Whole nother level.
Where the gap is, and the biggest challenge is they will find themselves going to work in a multi-generational workforce where they will have to translate those skills across people. And by the way, for those of you watching and listening, for the students that are in college right now are in Gen Z, and some of them older Gen Alphas.
Yes.
And so they are going to work and finding themselves in workplaces with anyone from a baby boomer to Gen X, which is the generation we're a part of, to millennials, which, by the way, are no longer young people. They are in their late 30s and early 40s. And so that is a multi-generational workforce with all of the cultural dynamics around each one of those components. And sometimes that's the hardest part. How do I make myself effective and demonstrate my skills and develop relationships when there are quite frankly like these cultural barriers in the workplace? And how can I avoid stepping in it? As you know, I spent over 20 years as an HR professional, and a great deal of what my job was employer relations issues and concerns. So it's great when I get to act in a recruiting function and hire someone and they're excited about being on the job, which is the stage most young people are in now, getting that first internship and that first job. But keeping your job and being responsible for your own professional development are things that are hard to navigate. And a lot of that has to do with how you manage relationships. And this is not an age specific thing, because I had a full-time job in HR because folks was going to cut up whether they was brand new or been on the job for a long time. But managing those interpersonal relationships, how we talk to one another at work, how we show up and engage with one another, I think is the biggest landmine that anybody should try to develop some skills around avoiding, for sure.
That's good.
And so when you think back to being brand new at work and finding yourself in that multi-generational workspace, what were some of the things early on? I'm thinking about you working with Willie and some other folks. Rest in peace to Willie. Willie, we still talk about Willie.
Teach a man how to squabble. That's basically what Willie was about.
Willie was Uncle Jerome's great uncle. For those of you not catching the reference, Willie was Uncle Jerome's great uncle. That was his personality.
But they may not know who Uncle Jerome is.
Well, you have to say who Uncle Jerome is. That was your show.
So that reference to Uncle Jerome is a character that was very notorious on the show Snowfall. That was a very successful drama about really the crack epidemic that ran through Los Angeles in the 80s, and Uncle Jerome was the uncle of one of the main characters.
Yes, and as he was beating someone down,
he told him
he had
after,
this famous line, which is,
teach a man how to squabble.
Teach a man how to squabble.
And Uncle Willie Humphreys liked to squabble.
And not to be confused with Kendrick Lamar's Squabble Up, which is also a squabble reference. You know, South LA is showing up with the squabbling all of a sudden.
It really is.
But he was quite confrontational, which is the point.
This is true.
And so how did you navigate through that?
And going back to those days, I think looking back, this is what I didn't realize. You know, you go to school, you got this little paper thin resume that has all these enhancements on what you've really done.
We stretched it out.
And, you know, you enter a job thinking, oh, I got a job because I got a degree and I got my little resume. But to your point, we really keep our jobs and are able to move and navigate. We didn't call it a personal brand back then. But that's really what we were building from day one of that first day on the job was establishing what our brand was in those places of employment. And I think that's something that, our daughter, her friends, and, young adults, that's how they need to think about is they're establishing their personal brand in the marketplace or in the workforce, regardless if they want to or not. How you show up, on time, late, early, the tone of your communication, how you make people feel when you're engaging with them, how your written communication is, how your hygiene is, how your grooming is, how even your car, you may take a coworker to a luncheon in your vehicle, they're making assumptions about you and who you are based on how you keep your car.
Yes.
So, and we didn't necessarily realize that at the time, but that's all speaking of a brand being established. And, I think what they need to understand is the same people you enter the workplace with now are the future C-suite that you may want to engage with in some way, shape, or form. And I know a lot of young adults is just like us. A lot of people want to be entrepreneurs. Well, guess what? Even if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to need clients. You're going to need decision makers. So you can't burn any quote unquote bridges on your way up because you don't know who's going to be in a position to influence how you advance the ball of your career, of your brand, and of your bag. So having what people like to talk about now, having high emotional intelligence. Yes, you need to have empathy. You need to be aware of how people are feeling in the room. You need to know how to read the room. But at the same time, to your point, you got to know how to manage relationships with skill and with precision. And that's something that I kick myself sometimes of, I wish I would have done a better job at managing relationship better when I was younger.
What do you mean?
I feel like I would have advanced further in my career if I would have been more skillful in managing not only the relationships of people at my level, but managing up. You know what I mean? I feel like it could have afforded me more opportunities, and have more options. I think if I would have capitalized on that more, and, I'm an introvert, right? So sometimes me being an introvert, I go into that thing, but in doing so, I realize now I'm counting the cost. And I was like, wow, I didn't take advantage of that opportunity that I had with that person because I didn't maintain that relationship over the years. So it's, and that's something, hey, we want to pass that down, right, to our children and their friends. We want them to, shoot for the stars and land on the moon, right? You know what I mean? And it can become a reality for them. And I think that's another thing that we're seeing. We're seeing the potential in these emerging adults and in these emerging career professionals, sharp, smart, skilled, talented, the whole package. And, we want to see them fly.
And I think a good tactic that whether you are a emerging leader or someone that's really established in your career is to be very intentional about governing those relationships. And the way I do it is literally by calendaring those relationships. And so if I say that I'm going to reconnect with someone in another 3 months, I will flip the pages of my calendar forward 3 months and write their name down on the calendar.
Y'all listening?
There's someone there. And I got a really good tip, and shout out to Julie Washington. I worked with Julie. She was a C-suite executive when I worked at Jamba Juice. And one thing that she does so well is stay connected within her network by sending out a newsletter Every year, at the end of the year.
Yeah.
You even remember
I
getting
remember
Julie's
some of those. Yeah,
Julie's
yeah,
newsletter.
Yeah.
And it was just such a lovely tactic, and I have shared that with people over the years because it allows your context to stay warm.
Yes,
And they
yes.
get to hear a little bit about what's going on with you professionally, a little bit about what is going on with your family, enough that's appropriate in a work context. But if you ever need to reach out to those contacts again and need to make those connections again, you have the opportunity to do that, and it doesn't feel so foreign. And so I think it's about finding a way to do it authentically to you. And some people have a personality like yours, and it might need to be a little bit more strategic. One thing you have in me is a wing woman. I affectionately am called Smooches.
That's right.
Because when we are out at networking events
Yeah.
and other things, you will say to me, I need you to put the smooches on, meaning I need you to come and kind of guide some of these conversations because it isn't just naturally in my personality to do so.
Absolutely.
And I share that thing that's a little bit private because even for introverted people, there are ways to
Absolutely.
utilize
Absolutely.
folks around you to be strategic, whether it's keeping it on your calendar or utilizing a newsletter or something a little bit more passive for you to continue to nurture those relationships that, again, will pay your career dividends for years to come. We, to this day, are still working with and making connections with people that we might not have physically worked with for the last several years, but as we are now 25 plus years in our careers, all of those relationships are so super important.
Absolutely.
So super important.
Absolutely. And as you were saying that, I remember, earlier on, you're working hard, you're learning as much as you can learn, and you feel good about that.
Yes.
And that's great, right? But, another lesson I just want to share with somebody that may be listening is if you're unable to articulate what you've learned, what you've done, who you've done it with, and who you've done it for, there can be a gap, right?
Absolutely.
And that's something, I encourage people, get in the habit of being able to tell your own story. You can't think that somebody else is going to be able to articulate your successes and your victories. And for me, I like interviewing, you know what I mean? Well, that was before, becoming an entrepreneur, but I like to get into interviews because interviews would give me the opportunity to rehearse that. And not only rehearse it, but get good at it, get very skilled in those engagements. And, I feel like, for some of those emerging adults and professionals, they need to figure that out, you know what I mean? And you may be the smartest and most skilled, but watch this. The leaders will be those that have the equal prowess in their ability to communicate.
Absolutely.
And sometimes there's a bias about that, and unfortunately you can't control that. You know what I mean? So, and sometimes, I've been with professionals and my heart is grieved because I'm reading the room and I know that the room is responding to their accent, and it hurts my heart every time it happens. But I'm sitting there like, I can't control that. I can be an advocate for that person, and that's what I do. And they said this. Oh, okay, got it. And, we just move the conversations along. But what I'm saying is that for emerging adults that are in the workplace, even those that want to become entrepreneurs, you need to invest in your development. The skill of what you're doing, but also your communication skills, be it written, be it verbal. I was reading something today that, Columbia was offering a certificate over the summer of executive presence, and that is a real thing. When you come into the room, what presence do you bring? Because people respond to that. And again, these are some of the soft skills or some of the skills that may not be in your required curriculum to graduate and matriculate. You know, it's this other level of growth and development, I think, that's going to separate people as they matriculate in their careers.
And you talked a little bit about something I want to backtrack to, which is how we as both colleagues and leaders express advocacy
Yes.
and allyship
Yes.
at work.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you grew up working in the construction field,
Yes.
construction project management field. There weren't a lot of women at the table.
Yes.
And you mentioned working with colleagues that were
Yes.
international colleagues,
Yes.
where English might have been a second language,
Yes.
and you're communicating with a client
Yes.
that might not, again, have just that level of fortitude and,
Yes.
empathy and compassion about communication.
Yes.
I have worked in environments where someone might be the youngest in the room, or quite frankly,
Yes.
I've worked at companies and organizations where many of the folks there were younger and the older folks in the room got dismissed. And so there are always opportunities,
Absolutely.
whether you are in a peer capacity or in a leadership capacity, to make sure the voices of those in the
Yes.
room are heard, that
Yes.
credit is given where credit is due.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes, it's the quiet person in the back that will come up with the great idea, and the person that has the personality will get the
Hijack
shine
that
and
thing.
hijack it and that sort of thing. And if you notice it, you have an opportunity
Yes.
to bring those things back. Talk about that a little bit, because that's one of those things that people don't always discuss or unpack.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
difference maker in the world of work, for sure.
Yeah, for me, you know, that was something that I took very seriously. And I think I took it seriously a lot because of my faith. You know, having a heart for people, number one, and having a heart for people that may not be heard or understood. So I think for me, a couple of things that was intentional for me, especially when I was in a managerial position where, you know, I was responsible for leading people, I always would, number one, I want them to have a safe place. And that's what I would say to them. I want you to have a safe place so that you can ask questions without the fear of being judged. Because I realized in a lot of my career, I would be the quiet in the room because I didn't want to disclose what I didn't know.
Sure.
And when I kind of had, you know, made it a little bit and knew what I was doing, I was like, I don't want people to live through that. I want a person to be able to say, hey, Rufus, can we talk about this issue privately? And they are comfortable with disrobing and saying, I don't understand this.
Absolutely.
This is what we're doing. Blah, you know, let's get on the whiteboard. Let's kind of work it out. And I would try, and again, I'm not trying to boast, but I'm just trying to because there was a time in my career where I realized I want to help other people more so than I want to climb myself.
Sure.
So there was a phase in my career I was like, I want to get out of your way. I want to be your advocate. I want to go and advocate for you, because I'm not trying to become the next piece of sliced Wonder Bread, in the company. So then that is giving them a safe place, providing real-time mentorship, and sometimes that does play itself out in the lens of gender, in the lens of race. Because like you said, my industry for the most part is dominated by men and men of European backgrounds, So if I have a young lady on my team, I'm trying to feel how she's feeling in the room. And sometimes that was a literal thing. In my work, okay, maybe the project manager for the contractor may have some emotional skills, but the superintendent that's running the field could be just a complete jerk and wants to railroad my female colleague. And then sometimes I need to show up a certain kind of way, to help people get some understanding.
Come on, Willie.
That,
you got a little Willie in you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, especially at this big age.
Yeah.
And then let my colleague know, no, I got you. If we need to knuckle up, we can do that, right? Because again, in those environments, I want her to go forward.
Right.
Because that's the thing, when you provide people a safe place, you understand what their vulnerabilities are. You understand what their insecurities are. You understand what our female colleague, the concern she has about having children and how that could possibly short circuit her career. I want to feel that, and I want to be an advocate to go to bat for her. Say, hey, we can figure it out. That's my pastor's heart, right?
Yeah.
That's my pastor's heart showing up in the marketplace. But representation in these jobs are critical. You know what I mean? Because the organizations are stronger, the service is better, and you're making a table where everybody can eat. And I'm not trying to, go there, but that is the truth of the matter, right?
Yeah.
And I think the message that I'm trying to share is, as leaders and managers, we have to take our job seriously when it comes to managing people and handling people. People can't be content to say, I'm the best salesperson, so I deserve to be the leader. You may be the best salesperson, but you may have a low ethic, and you may be a brute that has no sensitivity to nobody but yourself. You're not qualified to lead or manage people because you'll ruin them, right? So, it's necessary, especially in the climate that we're in right now.
Sure.
Because there's a cultural war happening right now. So people that have ethics, have integrity, that have empathy, y'all are needed right now. Right now, people are living through some very heavy times. And that may impact their work right now. And we got to be able to tap in and understand why, and how can we help them be successful? How can we support them so that they can be successful? Because everybody's living through some life experiences right now. But the advocacy is something that I take serious, at least when I'm on my game. I'll say, sometimes I'm not on my game and I may be checked out a little bit, but when I'm on my game, I want to make room for who's next.
Yes.
Because I realize
always
that
remember your
I'm
50% is more like other people's 200. So yes,
Well,
yes, I appreciate you being hard on yourself.
Hey, sometimes I checked out, but I want to make room.
Yeah.
I want to get out the way for who's next.
Yes.
There was a time when I was next, kind of, but now I get fulfillment by making room for who's next.
And one of the things in conversations that I have with folks as they are interviewing, and I think about our daughter and her friends having these first jobs, and even folks that are looking to make these career transitions and do these other things, is I usually, and I'm surprised I don't have one around me, I don't have my cell phone next to me now, but I usually in an interview will literally hold up my iPhone and say, I am looking for someone to Steve Jobs me. Because inevitably in the interview, someone will ask the question, well, what can I do to be impactful? Or how will you know I'm making a difference on the team? Or how do you know that I'm doing something unique? And I hold up my phone and I say, I knew to ask for a cell phone. I went to purchase a cell phone. Steve Jobs said, no, that's not just a cell phone. You can do your banking, you can check in on your flights, you can consume your entertainment, you can text your friends, you can record videos and capture content. I didn't know I could do all those things.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about making impact in an organization, within a team, whether one you join or one you build yourself, people know what to ask for. So you'll see a job posting, you'll see a request for proposal for someone looking for a contractor. You will see an ad for someone looking to hire someone to do some ad hoc work. People know what they need to ask for, but someone that can give them the little things that they don't know to ask for are the people that are the difference makers, people that can go into an organization or a company. And I'm glad you made the point earlier, whether you are an entrepreneur working for someone else,
the skill,
or an entrepreneur taking those same skills externally, you will always have a boss, whether it's a client in the entrepreneurial space, or whether it's someone in a supervisory capacity if you're an entrepreneur. And notice that I keep using that word because there's an attitude and a posture. There is a Steve Jobsing, so to speak, turning that into a verb. There's something that you need to do and to bring to those situations that is unique to you. You're going to see it a certain way. You're going to have a certain perspective. And let me turn and break the wall a little bit, Rufus, and talk to the camera. Here we go. Watch this. Because you know what? If you're in the room, this is why this is so important. If you are in the room, whether you are the only, the youngest, whether it's your first time there, whether you don't feel as qualified or don't have all the skills or all the resources, if you find yourself in the room, you belong there. And you have something to contribute to that space.
Come on.
There is no one brighter than you. There is no one that has more capacity than you have. So be comfortable and be okay being the first, the only, the other, and all of those things. Because if you are there and sitting next to all the other people that are there, you are equally as qualified to be in the room and be in the space. And that's important. And that's something I want our daughters to know. That's something that the young people that I have the opportunity and benefit of working with, something that I teach, and something that no matter what stage or age you find yourselves in, how many of our peers, even at our big age, as we say, let that fear of what they don't have, what they don't know, I don't want to show up in the room. I'm afraid to throw my idea out there. And quite frankly, if you're in the room, I always say they messed around and gave me a seat. They messed around and opened the door. They messed around and gave me an email address. However you phrase it, if you find yourself in the room, like, take advantage of being in the room.
Absolutely.
And don't be afraid to do something different. Do it your way.
To land the plane.
Yes.
Because we got to land the plane. This is something I want you to close us out with. You know, you do have this superpower of being a life coach. You know, one of our, people who speak into our lives has divinely called you a defibrillator. And when you engage young people now, I know that you're looking at them through multiple lenses. You're looking at them through who they are now and what their capacity is. How do you try and encourage them to expand their capacity so that they can become more, so that they can do more? Because sometimes I feel like that hunger that we had when we were, 22, 23, 24, I don't see it as commonplace. As the defibrillator, as the Dream Reliever life coach, how do you handle that tension?
Yeah, so the 18 to 22-year-olds, which is that primary audience for that message, they actually have a different lens. They think they can do everything. So it's a little bit different than when you and I were coming up. In fact, they think they already have a lot of the skill sets in a lot of ways. The challenge with that group is being good at something, teaching them to train their eye on a starting point.
That's good.
They understand how big the world is.
Yeah.
Our daughter has traveled the world at 20 years old, has traveled the world independently. At 20, has been as far away from us as Thailand. And as soon as she went to Thailand at 18, she said, well, there clearly is no place else I can go, Mom and Dad, because I've already been as far around the world as possible besides circling back around, right? So they have this infinite capacity where to feel as if they can do anything. To feel as if they can do anything.
Come on, somebody.
The coaching part and the skill set is getting them to be focused enough to find a point of entry. And I say sometimes the point of entry is the right opportunity, but the wrong company.
That's good.
So it might be exactly that dream job or dream opportunity, but it isn't the sexy, shiny, exciting company. It might be the smaller place. Sometimes it's the really exciting company and organization, but it's the absolute wrong job. But hey, get over there. Because once you have a .this email address or an @that name, or you got a badge that'll swipe you in.
Come on. I still got a couple badges.
Right. Take advantage of that. Right. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes for them it's finding out exactly where they should have a starting point. And so you and I know this as a principal. I will say to them, who's got your attention? Who are you following on social media? Who's doing good work that you're excited about? Who is the person that when you say and look at them and say, they are doing that thing, follow them. What are some ways from an auxiliary standpoint you can get a point of entry there? So for them, it's not about how big the world is, because they, like I said, they have no confidence issues. You started off with that conversation. They have no confidence issues. They have no self-esteem issues. They know the world is big. They know they have a place in that big world. That's something you and I are learning now. That's something that's inherently, generationally, something that they understand. But because they understand how big the world is, they think that they can sometimes shortcut and short circuit the competency development that is required at that point of entry. And you and I talk about that apprenticeship all the time. And so I think that's the big part for them, or for someone that's listening that maybe wants to flip careers, change careers, do something else, find that point of entry and understand that everything is brick by brick. I often tell young people I work with, no experience is ever wasted.
That's right.
And so sometimes, even if it's finding out what you don't want to do, I would rather you spend that year, that 3 months figuring out that that was not what you were interested in, than to go and get advanced degrees and build a skill set around it and still figure out that isn't for you, and I'm miserable later, right? After paying for years of med school and going through and figuring out that that's not your path. And so I think that's always the biggest thing, is finding that point of entry and realizing that you can't look at somebody's 15 or 20 year career and say, I want to craft my perfect opportunity now. No, they got 20 years in the game. So then they have refined their skill set, crafted their careers at that point. You were at a point of entry, and we all had to begin somewhere, right? Don't despise humble beginnings. We all had to begin somewhere. You were at your point of entry. Find that point of entry, and then from there, you build, and from there, you pivot.
I hope y'all are listening.
Yes.
Jamila just dropped a gem.
Oh, I think they should hit the tip jar again.
I think she just dropped a bomb as we're going to transition out of this episode. Thank you, Jamila, for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your gift with us. Thank you all for tuning in, to this very special broadcast. I do want to challenge you to share this episode with some people that you think would benefit from this conversation. I think this conversation, you see some of the services that we offer through our consultancy called the Vision Engineering Collective. If you would like more information about our consultancy, please just reach out. We'd be happy to share some of the services that we offer. And we know that this conversation is needed in a marketplace, in a workplace that is changing literally by the day.
Yes.
Once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for tuning in today. And please know that we will be back again with another With Love, the Chambers. If you would like to be a blessing to this production, to this broadcast, there will be a link in which you can buy us a proverbial cup of coffee to help us create more content like this that is going to be a blessing to each and every one of you. So with that, we're going to sign off. We'll see you again, same channel, next time, but real soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and God bless.
This episode of With Love the Chambers is brought to you by the Vision Engineering Collective, where purpose meets precision. Whether you're launching a bold initiative, scaling your organization, or navigating complex projects, their team brings over 25 years of expertise in project management, strategic planning, and vision execution across sectors like tech, healthcare, education, and nonprofit. Ready to turn your vision into reality? Visit www.thevcollective.info to learn more.
That's a wrap for today's episode of With Love, the Chambers.
We hope you laughed, learned, and felt encouraged along the way.
If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs a little love and wisdom today.
You can also connect with us online on all social media platforms at Rufus Chambers Online and at Jamila Chambers. We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time,
Keep living, keep laughing, and keep learning with love, the Chambers.